Hello guys, welcome back to Libertad, and here's Titty Hunter.
Today we're doing a full featured video on the 1991 Libertads, Type 1 and Type 2. Stay tuned.
Your winner by unanimous decision, and still World Heavyweight Champion of the World, the Mexican Libertad! Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Titty Hunter!
Before we start talking about the 1991 Libertad, I wanted to highlight something again, why it is important that folks anchor themselves to sold eBay comps. And what I'm showing right now on the screen is I looked up basically a 1998 Libertad MS69. I was just curious to see how price is trending. It is a coin that back in the summer of 2021, an MS69 for the 1998 Libertad had just cracked into the 700s. And now it is closing in on 3,000. And so, but that's not the point here. I know people are always interested in price trends, so I just put that out there. But I wanted to highlight just looking at some sold comps. And a quick pro tip for you. A lot of times you could be looking for a coin. You want to make sure you play around with what you're looking for. Like here, I typed in 1998 Libertad MS69. Some other people, they may not use Libertad in their listing for one reason or another. And I typed in here in this window, 1998 Onza MS69. Same coin. Some people sometimes use one term and not the other, so it doesn't catch it. So always play around with what you're looking for. Sometimes you may even want to try 1998 Mexico MS69. It'll be a lot more stuff to scour through, but a lot of times some sellers, they don't do their due diligence and they don't put all the information into the listing or the listing title. But here's the important highlight, and I've talked about this before, so I just want to highlight it one more time. Here I'm looking, I filter for sold listings, so these items actually sold. So I talked about one of the things that happens out there is sellers have shill bidders help them push up the price. And what you want to look for is to make sure that these are sales that stick, that they're not shill sales where then the seller cancels because the shill bidder actually won. They pushed it too high and they were the ones that bought. So right now I'm recording, it is July 19th. And I happen to see a July 17th 98 MS69 go for $2,849.99. So the point is, it's now been 2 days since that's taken place. It is very likely this was a legit sale because a lot of times when it's a shill win, the seller will cancel it, and that could take a couple of days. So as of right now, it looks like it sticks. And why do I want to highlight again eBay sold comps? I think this is crucially important because I talked about the Facebook groups, I talk about Reddit PMs for sale, and what's really important is in this interface, in eBay or in like Great Collections or in Heritage, those are actual, those are sales that actually took place. There's a term in the markets called painting the tape. That's when people play around and create artificial sales on low volume to help push up price. But when you're talking about a platform that's charging you a fee, well, in the case of this coin here, we're talking about it would cost over $300 to paint the tape and create an artificial transaction. But what happens in PMs for sale? What happens in the Facebook groups? I highlighted that situation where someone put up a coin. It was the 2007 MS69, and they put it for $400. Well, there's no skin in the game there. You can make a sale happen. You could collude with a bunch of folks and start painting the tape, create transactions that are not really happening to really push up the price. So that's why eBay sales are so important and sold comps, because there's skin in the game. You actually have to pay up to these platforms to make the transaction happen. Whereas on the other platforms, you start charging above eBay comps, you're coming out as suspect as not only being potentially just greedy, but you're also probably trying to play games and paint the tape. So I keep telling you, it is important to focus and anchor yourselves to platforms like eBay, Great Collections, Heritage, other online shops, to make sure that actual sales have taken place and games are not being played. The first thing I want to talk about in terms of the 91 Libertad, and I have brought this up in an earlier video, 91 was the first year where we went into a transition to what is known as the large Onza. Basically, that's how the ONZA are shown. They look like lowercase letters, but they're all in basically the same size. And because they're the same size, the nickname is essentially large Onza. So you had the majority of them were minted. They were large Onza, and we'll talk about mintage after this segment. But then you had a very small amount, about 50,000, that have, this is called the small Onza. And it is small Onza because you see how some of the letters look big, and the O is large, the Z is large, but the N and the A, they're an uppercase type of format, but they're tiny, and hence it is called small Onza. The other thing, and I forgot to talk about it during the 1990 was the transition where we went, and I'll highlight that spreadsheet shortly, where we went from the flat edge that has letters. Remember we talked about independencia. So the word independence in Spanish, independencia, going all across, y libertad. And this is considered the flat lettered edge. And so 1990, there was no longer this edge. And I don't have a 1990 on me to show you, but I do have this 95 on hand. And then we moved to the reeded edge at this juncture. And then you could kind of see it at an angle on the slab coin. We're now reeded. We're in the era of reeded Libertads. No more flat lettered edges. So that happened in 1990. So already in 91, we are at the reeded edge, but now we are also transitioning from large Onza font to what is known as the small Onza font. So here's the spreadsheet I have highlighted in the past, essentially showing by year the characteristics of the coins. And basically in 82 to 89 there, we're highlighting that they had flat lettered edge, and it said Independencia and Libertad. And you had all the way to 1990 that large Onza font. And we're now transitioning into the small Onza font era. And the coins in terms of diameter are still 36 millimeters, and we're still with the same current coat of arms. So as we move on years by years and the changes take place, we'll highlight those elements so you could follow along. So now let's talk about mintage. So I've highlighted on several occasions that the 91, the type 2, the small Onza format, that there's about 50,000 of them, give or take. Somewhere they're in the 50,000s because all the fractionals have the small Onza format, and they are also in that range as well. In terms of NGC graded population, there's 301, and PCGS total population 417. I actually went and updated those two cells in real time, being that it's a very scarce coin. What is interesting is that for being a scarce coin, and the 98 that ranks right below it in terms of mintage at 67,000, the 98 has more graded examples at NGC and more at PCGS. But I do suspect a lot of those are reslabs. People crack out the slab because they're not happy with the grade, and they just resubmit and hope to get a higher grade. So I do think a chunk of those are resubmissions. I feel like that will happen with the 91 Type 2s as well over time, being that they're so scarce. And then moving down near the bottom is the regular large Onza variety, where you essentially have 1.6 million of these. But what is interesting, and we've seen this in the prior years, for 1.6 million, there's only 635 graded examples at NGC, and 909 at PCGS. So it almost seems like there should be more, but again, highlighting again and again, and I think like I'll highlight it every video, for the grand majority, probably the biggest exclusion is your 2019 antiqued. But for most years, less than 1% of the mintage has been graded. Next, I want to talk about the NGC population report as well as the PCGS population report. The first thing I want to mention, I think PCGS does a much better job handling varieties for the Libertads than does NGC. And in PCGS, they explicitly show you each type line by line, whereas on NGC, there's just they have this proof-like, but I'm not even focused on this proof-like. For some strange reason, they deviated and made a line for that. But the large Onza and small Onza, you have to actually click inside this varieties button to see what's in here, and they split it up here. So I'd mentioned before, and apparently they had increased the price, getting variety attribution now on the label to have small Onza or large Onza. That's now up to $20 a coin. So prices have increased for that service. There's another nuance with NGC you should be cognizant of, and that's essentially if you decide, and it was probably happening more early on than now that folks know the small Onza is worth a lot more money and it's actually rare, folks are tending to pay to have that attribution on the label. But there's something interesting going on. If folks are submitting the 91 and not paying for Variety Plus and just say, give me a basic 91 label, there's actually 221 examples of that out there. What is unknown right now is of those 221, there could in fact be small Onzas in that population. We just don't know because whoever submitted decided, I'm not paying the $20 for that service. I don't want it. So of that population right there, that 221, yes, likely you're going to have the grand majority being large Onza, but I know there's some small Onzas because I used to own one of these. I actually sold it to someone else who then mailed it into NGC and paid the Variety Plus to get the small Onza designation. So I did own one in the past that fell in this subsection here. But on PCGS, they kind of... So I'm not a member of PCGS, so I'm not sure if they're automatically charging you a Variety Plus fee when you submit a 91, but they fully split out the 91s type 1 and type 2 in their population report. Going back to the NGC population report, what I think is an interesting phenomenon, and just focusing in on those with the actual attribution of small Onza versus large Onza. For the top pop MS69, there's 46 of the small Onza, but only 12 of the large Onza. What this leads me to believe, and I mean this is just a guess, Banco de Mexico does not provide clarity, but I believe being that it was the first year of small Onza, they probably kind of did this as a trial run before going into 1992, and 1992 was a full run with this new font, this small Onza font. So it is likely that these got a little more tender loving care, whereas these mass-produced low-quality control regular 91s, they were just cranked out with low QC, so it is much harder to find an MS69 example of the large Onza. So that's interesting here on the NGC side. And on PCGS, we are seeing the same thing. There's 120 type 2s with an MS69 grade. It's actually much closer, and there's 117 on the large Onza. But it really sticks out like a sore thumb on the NGC side. Many more higher grade small Onzas than large Onza. And then just a reminder, if you don't own one of these and you're looking for what sold comps are, you just come on eBay. You come here on this left pane and choose sold items. The completed items will auto check because a sold item is a completed item. And then once you have that, I like to sort by ended recently, and you can kind of scroll through and see some of the prices. You're seeing mostly type 1s because there's just many more of those. 97, 95, 70, 45. Here's a graded large. You got to scroll down a little more if you really want to see a type 2. So back on July 14th, a type 2 MS66 graded by PCGS, $850. So you really start to notice the difference of that much lower mintage, high rarity type 2 versus the type 1. So make sure you are always checking for sold comps on eBay before making a decision on any platform. Thanks for checking out the video on the 1991 Libertad. Stay tuned. In the next video, we will be talking about the 92. Thanks.